Welcome back to the Bluechip Breakdown, Vols fans. I'm your host, Bull. In today's video, we'll be talking about what Nico Iamaleava needs to do to win the Heisman Trophy. As y'all know, I'm very big on him, and I'm very big on this team, but I'm not the only one. We're going to listen to two experts speak on Nico and the team. We're also going to be touching on some news that just came out with the NCAA and Charlie Baker. But before we get into it, do us a huge favor and like and subscribe to the channel. All right, so we all know that Tennessee was granted the injunction versus the NCAA, which means that there's no more transfer portal or NIL rules at this point. We've been waiting on the NCAA to come out with some new guidelines. And I just read an article yesterday by On3. I'll leave a link in the description below for those of y'all who would like to read it. But basically what it's talking about is Charlie Baker sending out a memo to the big board members of the NCAA, letting them know that some new guidelines will be coming out here shortly. And to me, that's just pretty much code for I'm waiting on Greg Sankey to tell me what we're going to be doing moving forward. And as we all know, that Greg Sankey's stance is pretty much, let's not try to create any more lawsuits because we're already sitting on $1 billion plus worth of lawsuits, which I anticipate that the NCAA is definitely going to have to pay at some point. So we will see something coming out here in short order, and we'll keep y'all up to date on that. But one of the things that I want to talk about with that is, could it mean that some other rules, with the NCAA will change as well? I think that they need to start to try to look more forward, again, towards those court cases and say, hey, maybe we need to try to switch some things up so that, we're showing some good faith and maybe the judge will show some leniency. I don't know, man. Like, I'm not a lawyer, so that's just what I'm speculating on, but y'all let me know what y'all think about it down in the comment section. Now, let's get on to a couple of guys from 24/7 Sports in Cooper Patanga and Andrew Ivins. They are recruiting analysts over at 24/7 Sports. And on their podcast, they were talking about 4 teams from the SEC that could potentially make it into the playoffs. I'm going to pull it up for y'all, and then we'll talk about it.
My question is, who reaches a CFP semifinal first? Brent Venables, Josh Heupel, Brian Kelly, or Kalen DeBoer? I like Tennessee. Tennessee is where I win. I think immediately, I think about Josh Heupel, that offense, what they brought in, obviously at the skill positions. I think the quarterback makes it go. You think about the success that they had 2 years ago with a guy like Hendon Hooker. You and I talk about it all the time. Timing, anticipation, accuracy. That's how that offense goes, right? It's a up-tempo offense, and it's all built around efficiency. I think Nico's that guy. I don't think they had that last year in Joe Milton because that's not his skill set. Sure, a lot of arm talent, but in terms of being able to play within himself, that's not his game. I get excited when I think about Nico in this offense, and yeah, maybe a little bit of recency bias coming off the Cheez-It Bowl as well, but I really like Tennessee, and I just gravitate to quarterback. And you think about guys like Jordan Ross and David Hobbs and what they've done defensively as well, like what they've done in the secondary. They're one of the most deceptive rosters, I think, pound for pound in terms of how they've built this thing over the last 2 cycles as well. So, Drew, I'm high on Tennessee. I like Tennessee a lot.
Tennessee, maybe they should have been my answer. I feel like I've been saying this for 2 years now, but every time Tennessee gets a defensive commit, I'm like, okay, I think this guy that they're bringing in elevates the floor of the defense, and this group is getting better and better. With Tennessee, the thing is, we know they're going to score points. They just got to stop other opponents, and there hasn't been many defensive takes as of late where I'm like, I don't understand the vision for this with the Volunteers. You said it, Jordan Ross. I mean, James Pierce, they got there as well.
All right, so I'm not the only person that's very high on Nico and our Volunteers. We do have a very good roster from top to bottom. I love the way that our defense should be looking coming up in 2024. And also, whenever you look at this offense, it really is almost impossible to stop. Okay, this air raid, whenever you got a quarterback like Nico and you've got the playmakers, you've got the offensive line, you've got a stable of running backs, there's really nothing that you can do to fully stop an offense that I feel like is going to be ran better than it's ever been run. One of the people who ran it best, though, was Art Rouse down there at Baylor with RG3. And that leads me to my next point of, what does Nico need to do this upcoming season to win the Heisman Trophy? I think that he needs to have a season kind of similar to what RG3 had. I think that he can exceed his numbers, even though RG3 has some incredible numbers. And we'll also take a look at what Hendon Hooker's numbers were before he got injured in 2022, because we know that if he did not go down, he would have won that Heisman Trophy. So let's go ahead and pull up RG3 stats. All right, so today we're going to be looking at sportsreference.com. And we're going to be focused on the 2011 season because that's when RG3 won the Heisman. So you can see that his completion percentage was 72.4. And just for reference, Hendon Hooker's was 69.7 before he went down. He had 4,293 yards. And also for reference, Hendon Hooker had 3,135 yards and RG3 had 37 touchdowns. Hendon Hooker had 27. RG3 threw 6 interceptions and Hendon Hooker only threw 2. Now RG3's quarterback rating was 189.5 and Hendon Hooker's was 175.5. All right, now let's take a look at RG3's rushing numbers. He had 699 yards, good for 3.9 yards per carry with 10 touchdowns. Hendon Hooker had 104 carries for 430 yards, which was good for 4.1 yards per carry and 5 touchdowns on the ground. All right, now let's take a look at Baylor's schedule from 2011. We could see that the big wins on this schedule was versus TCU, versus Oklahoma, and versus Texas. They also had 3 losses versus Kansas State, Texas A&M, and Oklahoma State. And to the right, you can see the RG3 was putting up crazy numbers. A couple of games, he rushed for over 200 yards. And in one game, he almost rushed for 250. All right, so we all know that you can put up some big numbers in this air raid offense. And looking at RG3 versus Hendon Hooker stats, the first thing that stands out to me are their rushing numbers. If Nico wants to be in the Heisman conversation this season, he's going to have to be a dual threat quarterback. I would expect for him to get somewhere in between their rushing numbers, okay? He's going to be a much better athlete than Hendon Hooker, but I don't think that he's going to be quite as good of a runner as RG3 was, and that should be good enough, right? So somewhere around 300 to 400 yards on the ground with, 5 or more touchdowns should be just fine as long as he has a good season passing. And if you look at Hendon Hooker's numbers versus RG3's, what you'll notice is their numbers probably would have been identical if Hendon Hooker finished out the 2022 season. So there's a lot to be said about this system and this scheme being quarterback friendly as far as being able to put up some major numbers. But I also think that Nico is just a very, very polished quarterback. Okay, he's got the timing, he's got the touch and anticipation, not to mention he's going to have a better overall roster than either one of these players had when they were in college. So I definitely think that he can surpass their numbers potentially. But to me, he would only need to throw for about 3,800 yards, obviously, or more, and have somewhere around 30 touchdowns. Now, one of the biggest factors is going to be how he performs in big games. RG3 and Hendon Hooker both had their, signature Heisman moment. Nico's going to have to do it at some point, once or twice this season. I think that his first showing is going to be versus Oklahoma, okay? Going to Norman, I think that he's going to light it up, and that's probably going to be his, first introduction to being a real Heisman candidate. After that, I think that in Athens versus Georgia, if he can show up and if he beats Georgia, then in my mind, he will be the Heisman Trophy winner in 2024, and Tennessee will be the favorites to win the whole thing. But that's going to be it for this video. Thank y'all for sticking all the way to the end. Please make sure, as always, to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share with your friends, family, and other volunteer fans, and we'll see y'all on the next one. Thanks. Peace.